Hi, this is a recording of my talk that I've given to Qonf today. This is post-conference. Qonf is still happening tomorrow, so if you're still interested in checking it out, Qonf is an online conference for testers all around the world, and we're coming together to celebrate our failings. I'm really enjoying the itinerary at the moment. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the speakers tomorrow too. So I just wanted to record my presentation to let anyone catch up on my talk post-conference. And also I think this would be a good talk to get online at some point. So the intro for my talk. I'm a high-functioning depressed person. I've lived with depression for 10 years now, which is as long as my testing career is. I actually ended up in testing because I failed engineering. So I was studying mechatronics engineering, a graduate diploma in Japanese and computer science. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was just smart and switched on. And I thought, you know what? I could do research on robotics in Japan. Wouldn't that be cool one day? So I developed chronic depression halfway through uni. The engineering subjects became all too hard, but I was 3/4 of the way through computer science, and so dropped the engineering just to get a piece of paper just that little bit quicker. And that's turned into a good thing. At the time, I was also working in a supermarket and I wanted some work that was a bit more related to my uni studies. I actually tried applying for part-time web developer roles, but I was getting rejected left and right. And someone said, why don't you apply for one of our testing roles? So I started applying for a testing role, and I landed my first part-time gig while I was at uni. And I've kind of stuck with testing since then. I have had temptations to move away from this career, and there has been some hard times where I've considered moving away, but I've always been drawn back, and I do get elements of enjoyment from this career, and I'm going to go through some of those personal failings in this presentation. So to start with, let's get the presentation up and running. So you can access these slides at shorturl.at/BEWC4. And a bit about me, I have a blog, bughuntersam.com. This will be going up on YouTube. I also live stream pair testing on Twitch, usually every Sunday. You can find me on Twitter and usually on LinkedIn as well. So halfway through my testing career, I landed what I thought was the ideal job. It was a big, giant tech company. I can't actually say the name of the company because I was a contractor and I can't divulge those details. But, you know, think on-site chefs, really big global teams. I was working on a mobile application that you can use for mapping and navigation. And I just got into a real funk with this job. About 6 months into this job, I was feeling really disappointed. I felt like there was something wrong with me because the work wasn't engaging. And as a contractor in these types of positions, you're often given roles and responsibilities or work that's not as engaging because they don't want to give it to full-time employees. So it can be a little bit monotonous and repetitive. To give you an idea of what I was doing, I was helping triage bugs that came through for public transport requests. So if you were trying to search for a bus that would get you from A to B, and if the bus stop wasn't in the right location, or if the bus didn't actually turn up because the timetable was wrong, I would help triage that information and make sure that if it was data related, it would go to the team who would talk to the government agencies who provided that public transport data sets. Whereas if it was an actual software bug, I would investigate it further and then try to communicate that back to the devs team. After about 6 months of this work, I was not finding it engaging. And I thought this was meant to be the pinnacle of my tech career. Like, everyone wants to work for these companies. There must be something wrong with me for not enjoying this. And it took me a little while to realize that it just wasn't the right role for the skills and what I could bring to that. And so I started looking at a whole bunch of other different roles. I was considering becoming an Android developer, maybe getting into project management, or even getting into user research as well, which is still a strong passion of mine. So I was looking far and wide for a new job. I was using this spreadsheet to help me manage my job hunting efforts at the time. So I'd list the company, the source that it came from, the type of role, where I was up to in the whole interviewing process. I guess the most exciting column is probably the J column, and that was the excitement I felt for that particular role. I also had a couple of notes with how I was managing the job application process too. So I was being really thorough for this. When I was job hunting, I wasn't in a rush to find the next job because I knew I had that comfort with knowing what I was doing at the moment. And I knew I was on a 12-month contract. So about 3 months before the 12-month contract was due to end, I started this job hunting effort because I did not want to renew this contract for another 12 months. But lo and behold, I found a quality coach role, which seemed to have suited me to a T. It was a really good job description, and I'll share that with you at the moment. The company was Campaign Monitor. They're an email marketing company here in Australia. They've actually done surprisingly well for a small Australian startup, not quite like Atlassian or Canva or anything on that scale, but they still have a really nice office in Sydney. In terms of trying to migrate from big giant tech company, Campaign Monitor was a really good company to also move to. On-site chef and stuff like that really helps with that company culture. They had a C# backend. They were trying to migrate to microservices. The skills they were looking for were people who enjoy teaching other developers. And they had a bit of a summary of the role as well. But then I broke my ankle. I fell off a wall, indoor rock climbing. I had all of these interviews lined up. I hadn't quite landed on a role just yet, and I couldn't walk for 12 weeks. I spent a week in hospital, and it was pretty bad. I even took an interview in the hospital while all of this was happening. A few days in, I just couldn't reschedule this one interview, so I ended up grabbing a business suit. Put it over my hospital gown. I got all the hospital equipment in the background and go nuts over trying to do in this interview. And I was in a room with 4 other people, and so these other ladies got to see me participate in an interview. But yeah, it was not a great pleasant time. And I was navigating around on a knee scooter, and I didn't expect this to impact my mental health as much, but considering I knew I had a history of depression, I probably should have projected at least some sort of impact. This photo here was taken at my uncle's, and they live next to a train station. So I get there on my knee scooter. I'm trying to get into the city because I need to get to another interview, and I get to the train station, and I can't get onto the train because there is no lift that goes down to the train station. Nearly every train station in Sydney now has lifts, but this one, turns out it didn't. And I just remember breaking down and just being overwhelmed with that sense of failure. Like, I can't do anything. I can't even get on a train because, I'm stuck with these wheels. And I got really upset over that. Managed to get over it eventually, but it was just one example of how recovering from a broken ankle had a huge impact on my mental well-being. So the interview was a two-stage process. It worked really well. The first session was like talking about what you know about testing, and the second session was more of a coaching session. They actually got a more junior developer into the room, and we did a mock pair testing coaching session on a certain feature. I enjoyed this interview so much that I almost forgot that I had a broken ankle, and I almost stood up at the end to shake someone's hands. But yeah, so it was a good interview. And it's nice to have a couple of questions to ask at the end of the interview that kind of align with your own personal values and what you're trying to get out of the role to maximize that. So I was successful in getting the role. I helped the team run bug bashes. Bug bash is an exercise where you get the whole team together and it's tools down. Even you can invite developers, product owners, anyone who wants to explore the product who may not necessarily have tested it, and try and encourage them to find as many bugs as possible. And this is one of the trophies that I had handed out at a previous bug bash. So you try to make it a bit of fun, maybe bring a couple of snacks, and try to award your best bug hunters. One of the favorite things that I had achieved in this role was promoting accessibility testing. Unfortunately, the business did not really need a strong accessibility advocate, and that's where we eventually decided to part ways. So what went wrong? I didn't pass probation. I was basically told to leave after 6 months, and it was a fine breakup. We broke up on good terms. I'm still good friends with a lot of the people from the company. And it was an experimental role, and they weren't too sure what they were expecting from the role, but from hiring me, they realized they developed that idea a bit further and were able to figure out what they were expecting from the roles. And it just turned out that my skills did not match the requirements for that role. I wanted to try and focus more on mobile and accessibility, and they realized they really needed someone to help drive the automation across the whole development team. And trying to get involved with automation frameworks almost from the ground up or fleshing it out wasn't my strength at the time. I wasn't particularly interested in pursuing that path. I am more interested in it now. I have more confidence in my skills, but also it was a C# backend, and all of my previous experience had been with Java backends. So and because I was recovering from the broken ankle, I wasn't able to start that role on the right foot. So I literally wasn't able to give this role my best foot forward. And struggling with the mental health ramifications meant I wasn't able to give this role my best. And we moved on. To give you a bit more context about the team, we were a team of 2 testers in amongst about 60 developers, and we were trying to really scale that quality coaching mindset. And after I was let go from this role, it did take Campaign Monitor about 9 months to fill it with a new tester. So once they knew what type of person they wanted for that role, they were able to be very thorough and meticulous with trying to hire the right fit. And that person who got that role after me, I worked with them in a previous company, and they still have that same role today, and they are doing an awesome job there. What would I have done differently? Because I was in such a rush to jump into full-time work, I really should have taken a step back and gone, you know what, as I recover from this ankle, I really need to ease into part-time work. Can I have some flexible arrangements while I'm recovering from this? Early on, while recovering from that broken ankle, I really did try to push myself too hard, and I just didn't have the mental capacity to help that team in that context. And once you start off on with a bad reputation, it's really hard to recover from that situation in a business context. So that's what I would have done differently. I would have also tried to have jumped more into the code, but again, I didn't have the mental capacity to be able to do that. I've also been made redundant over my whole entire, I was working for a startup, and I never thought I'd get the chance to work for a meditation app. It had, 5 million users all around the world, and they managed to convince the team they needed a lead test automation engineer. I'm like, oh, this will be interesting, an interesting experiment. And I was made redundant after 5 months. Turns out, when the budget is tight, and people are asked to cut some slack or cut some fat off the staffing requirements, software testers are expensive and can be some of the first people to go in terms of that type of process. And that's fine. I got to learn something about how startups work, and it was a really interesting environment, but it's also just another failing in my career that triggers my sense of failure. One of the problems with my depression is I often see myself as a failure. It doesn't matter what other people say internally inside my own head, I say some pretty nasty things. And so there's just sometimes, working in the workplace, that sense of failure just gets triggered for not necessarily anything my fault, but it still comes up every now and again. Also, in my previous role, I had a couple of poor performance reviews, and that was very challenging to deal with, especially when my mindset likes to make me feel like a failure. So when you get a poor performance review that basically says I'm not meeting to the role's expectations, it really triggered that sense of failure, and I wasn't able to get the support I needed to try and experiment with different roles in this context. It might have been one of those situations where the whole working from home and the pandemic made it really hard to try a new role in that context, to try and refresh that interest or that passion or whatnot. And so my reaction to the poor performance review was, well, I could just leave and I'll try starting my own business. I wanted to try and start my own business in 6 to 9 months' time anyway, so it just kind of brought those plans a little bit forward. I would have preferred to have a slightly larger emergency fund and to have slightly more paid off my credit card debt before taking that jump. But I actually am really glad I made that jump now. It turns out I was only out of work for 2 weeks, and I've landed a fairly decent contracting role with a company called Equal Experts. So if you're ever looking for any consultants who can help you do some work, transforming monolithic back-end systems into a more microservice safe architecture, or mobile apps or whatnot, they're a really good crew to check out. And I'm not biased or anything, because it's not like I'm working for them right now or anything at all. But that was really hard in terms of that poor performance review triggered that sense of being a failure as well. And it was a little hard for me to try and get over that. What would my ideal role look like now? Now, the fact that I've gone through all of these roadblocks and failures in my own career, I actually have a pretty good idea of what type of team I'm looking for in terms of engagements. I really like collaborating with software engineers in helping them improve their own quality engineering practices. So I want to focus on that really strong collaborative approach, getting elbows deep in code. I'm not very good at writing test automation code from scratch. I don't get a lot of satisfaction from that type of work, so I'd be looking to try and avoid that. But building out testing with the right feedback at the right time with the software engineering teams that makes sense and is not just a waste of automation testing and effort is totally what I'm looking for. Probably specializing in mobile apps as well. I'd like to remain in that area, and just looking to do more of the online content as well. I really enjoy teaching, and I think I can make something out of these YouTube videos, putting online content. I do have to work pretty hard over the next couple of years to try and get some online content that gets some decent traction, but I want to try and build up more of that stuff for that can help you be better at software testing too. I'm going to introduce spoon theory. This is a disability metaphor, and if you're talking about mental health or capacity, or you're struggling with something, this is a good analogy to just make it a little bit easier to talk about. So everyone's got like a certain capacity for spoons. Most neurotypical people out there don't really recognize or notice when their spoons are being spent. But if you're struggling with depression or any other chronic illness, you actually have like maybe a reduced or finite amount of spoons, and maybe something like the act of getting up out of bed consumes 1 or 2 spoons, and you already have a small subset of spoons. And so you can get to the end of the day and just be like, I'm out of spoons, or I need to spend some time recharging my spoons. And whatever that looks like for you, that's fine. This is just a lightweight metaphor to be able to say, look, I'm just out of energy and I can't do much more today. Dan Ashby has this really cool mind map for how he interviews other testers, and if you're going through that interview process or trying to figure out what a good career path is for you, maybe trying to figure out how you might answer some of these questions, but also if you're on the other side of interviewing testers, this could be a good framework for trying to navigate that. I actually recently used this mind map to interview a fellow tester to join the Equal Experts network. So yeah, it's a nice little mind map. You can read a lot more on my blogs for any of the topics that have been discussed today. And as a bit of a summary, quality coaching can be a really cool title, but it can also be a really hard role to try and fulfill. Experimental roles can also be very challenging and very hard, though I'd say the risk might be worth the reward, because if you can make it work, it can be really rewarding. I've taken a risk starting my own business, but I've also taken risks joining startups and that quality coach role where it wasn't a bit of a mismatch with skills and requirements. In general, life can be hard too. I've really struggled with my own mental health and well-being. So try to keep your mental health healthy. It's easier said than done. I still struggle with it. I find writing about my mental health struggles, going to therapy, is a great help for trying to check in on some of that stuff. I tend to take more mental health days during the year whenever I'm getting a bit overwhelmed and just feel like I can't focus on work as well. So I'm very open and transparent about my struggles with mental health with the team that I work in. And you can always prepare for your next role, whether it's updating your CV or keeping track on jobs that are coming through the market for anything that's particularly interesting. It's really up to you how you can drive your career. You don't have to sit there and let your career happen to you. You can have a more proactive approach to it and look to get more satisfaction out of what you do. Cool. I will write up a blog post of some of the questions that came up from Qonf to help answer anything that came up. Again, you can access these slides at this link. Cool. Thank you.